from the National News Studio, Sri Lanka.
Good evening and welcome to the National News broadcast, bringing to you live from the National News Studios here at the ChannelEye Rupavahini Corporation. We are ready to bring you the top stories here at home and around the world. I am Charithamini Prarachi.
I'm Dilanjali Anand, and these are the top stories making headlines for tonight. A decisive discussion between the President and the IMF chief. The Supreme Court issues an injunction order preventing Finance Secretary retaining funds for the local government polls. Rupee appreciates further. Sri Lankan rupee is allowed in Indo-Sri Lanka trade deals. The President says a government can be changed only by a parliamentary election. 2,300 multi-duty assistants in the Uva province attached to the Railway Department.
On to those and other stories in detail now, and starting off with the top local story. A discussion took place last night over Zoom between the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, and President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The discussion focused extensively on the IMF financial facility and the expected debt restructuring for Sri Lanka. Currently, there is a prevailing sense of optimism among all stakeholders involved in Sri Lanka's debt restructuring and financial facility. It is noteworthy that the IMF Managing Director is having the discussions with the President, considering the recent discussions held with the Chinese Prime Minister. According to a recent report by Bloomberg News, Chinese Premier Li Qiang expressed China's willingness to participate in multilateral efforts aimed at constructively contributing to debt-ridden countries during a discussion with the IMF Managing Director. The report further suggested that the debt-ridden countries like Sri Lanka and Pakistan are taking necessary steps towards taking joint action in this regard. And meanwhile, the Supreme Court issued an injunction order today preventing the Financial Secretary and the Attorney General from retaining funds that have been allocated from the budget for the local government polls 2023. The Supreme Court has also issued an interim order preventing them from retaining the funds allocated to the government press to print the ballot papers. A three-member panel of judges issued this order granting leave to considering a fundamental right petition filed by General Secretary of the SJB Ranjit Madhuba Bandara. The court said that the Financial Ministry, Government Press, IGP and other state institutions are bound by the Constitution to support the Elections Commission to hold elections free and fair manner. The government is also bound to prove financial grants to the Election Commission under the Consolidated Fund. The Finance Secretary and the government printer is under obligation to follow the orders issued by the Election Commission. The government officials who violate these regulations are liable to be punished with a fine not exceeding 100,000 rupees or 3 years imprisonment or both. Appearing for the Attorney General, Additional Solicitor General Priyant Navan told the court that the government has no intention to violate democracy or fundamental rights. The government is bound to safeguard people's franchise. He also reverted the charges levelled against the Financial Secretary to deliberately retains the relevant funds. He has already released some money for the election activities. The Election Commission under further said that the Cabinet of Ministers has decided to limit state expenses in the face of an economic crisis. The Supreme Court postponed the case until the 26th of May for further consideration. Meanwhile, the Elections Commission met today to take a decision on the date of holding the election. After a lengthy discussion with relevant institutions, the Election Commission will announce the election date before the 9th of March.
The Sri Lankan rupee further appreciated against the US dollar today. According to the data issued by the central bank, the rupee has shown steadiness in comparison to other major currency units of the world. Buying rate of the US dollar was at 343.97 rupees yesterday. It was further decreased to 334.50 rupees today. Selling rate of a US dollar decreased 356.73 rupees to 348.03 rupees. Buying rate of euro was recorded as 343.24 rupees. Buying rate of a sterling pound is at 398.41 rupees. Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, says that many reasons have led to this positive change.
Our interventions have helped to minimize volatility. For example, now the last 5 days of this week, we have purchased $308 million from the market last 5 days. There's a lot of liquidity available in the market. So we have been gradually relaxing. Now it's stable. I think what we're going forward, the inflation targeting regime, our commitment to flexible exchange rate regime when situation is better and when there's a deepened foreign exchange market which can absorb shocks and we can reflect the demand and supply with a lot more liquidity. We can let the market to determine the exchange rate going forward.
Meanwhile, the inflation on Sri Lanka is decreasing further. It was 58.7% in January and down to 50.6% in February. The main reason for this is the price decrease of food items. The IMF says that it extends support to the tax revisions introduced by Sri Lanka. It is a significant factor to win the trust of creditors. IMF country representative Masahiro Nozaki and senior operational head Peter Braver pointed out that the tax income should be increased in favourable to the economic growth while granting relief to the affected people.
The central bank says the policy interest rates will be increased by 100 basis points. The Monetary Board of the central bank has taken this decision under the monetary policy review of the second quarter.
The Monetary Board decided to raise policy interest rates by 100 basis points with effect from, I think, today. So decision was based on several factors, mainly negotiated the staff level agreement with the IMF. And also the fact that we are now implement all the pre-actions. We saw the one pre-action which was left because they were uncertain on inflation projections. Now we are come to almost close to implementing the IMF program. And for us to be able to move forward, we basically had to reach a consensus with the IMF and ask on what is the required adjustment of policy rates compared to what we agreed earlier. So I think earlier we agreed to about consensus was to be increased by 250 basis points, but somehow we both agreed that path is going to be, decision is going to be much faster. As a result, we agreed that the policy rates will be raised by 100 basis points today. As a result, we took that decision today. That one important part is that with that, we are now implemented all the pre-actions and we are stand ready to adopt the IMF program. I think we hope that that will happen soon and there will be hopefully within this month.
The State Bank of India followed the non-dollar transaction method for exports yesterday. Accordingly, Lanka rupees are accepted instead of US dollars from the bank. The government of both countries are taking steps to popularize using rupees in transactions instead of US dollar. A seminar was held in Colombo yesterday regarding the use of Indian rupees as an accepted foreign currency unit in bilateral trade. The seminar was held under the patronage of Governor of the Central Bank Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, State Minister of Finance Shehant Semasinghe and Indian High Commissioner Gopal Barclay. The aim of the seminar was to identify the problems pertaining to use of Indian rupee in the international trade transactions. Officials of the Indian Central Bank also expressed their views online at the seminar.
I think one way should be to resume the negotiations on ETCA, and I'm very happy to inform you that both governments in principle have been interacting in this regard. We have received some suggestions from the government of Sri Lanka which are under consideration. So in the course of time we do expect the resumption of the negotiations on ETCA which have not taken place for some time.
First important step that they have taken is the first important step towards a long journey of making Indian currency as an international currency. I think this is a very important step. We as a neighboring country which has a strong integration already with India, we stand benefit. This is where we were very happy when this was announced, and I can remember especially last year when we were facing very difficult the hard currency liquidity issue. I can remember a lot of Indian business leaders here have been coming and asking me whether they can at least allow for them to use INR at least for their trade transactions because lack of liquidity in hard currencies. This we were very keen, and High Commission has and also RBI, our colleagues, helped a lot in this process, and we basically first made as a designated currency for trade transaction, and our banks were happy and they very efficiently opened their accounts. I'm happy to there have been already transactions happening.
The government of India as well as people of India for helping Sri Lanka at the most difficult, challenging period. We all are looking forward for the IMF program approval. And when it comes to India, the strong financial assurances which was extended to IMF on behalf of Sri Lanka. We appreciate your support on that. I think from the government's point, our main focus is the economy. We do understand in the recent past, most of the decisions the government took are hard decisions. We have kept the parliament informed, kept all the committees informed, and we have communicated the message to the general masses in Sri Lanka why we had to take these hard decisions. That is to ensure that Sri Lanka will not go back to a history which we don't even want to dream of. So when it comes to our economic recovery, India was a strong partner of ours. The investment avenues which are taking place right now in Sri Lanka on infrastructure development, especially on the energy sector, on the transport, the connectivity sector, will benefit Sri Lanka.
Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe emphasized that the only way to change a government is through a parliamentary election and not through street protests.
He said this at the commissioning ceremony of the Air Force officer cadets at the Trincomalee Air Force Base this morning. The president said that a nation can become anarchic due to an economic collapse. Therefore, he urged everyone to prioritize and safeguard both the constitution and the economy of the country. At this ceremony, 40 officer cadets, including 3 females, were commissioned by the president and received their ceremonial swords. Thereafter, flying brevets were pinned on the 13 pilots officers and 7 trophies were awarded for special achievements. 2 officer cadets have shown exceptional performance were awarded the Sword of Eagle for the best student of the General Duties Pilot branch and the Sword of Honour for the overall best student among all branches. State Minister of Defence Pramita Bandara Tennakon, President's Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor to the President of National Security Sagala Ratnayaka, Eastern Provincial Governor Anuradha Yahampad, Defence Secretary Retired General Kamal Gunaratne, Air Force Chief Air Marshal Sudarshana Patrana and other officials were present on this occasion.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe instructed the subject minister and the officials to expedite the program to reactivate the fuel tank facility in Trincomalee. The president gave these instructions engaging in an observational tour in the Lanka IOC fuel storage terminal in Trincomalee today. The president pointed out that the need to renovate and modernize the fuel tank facility under the Trincomalee development program as it has not been utilized for decades. The president was welcomed by the managing director of the fuel tank terminal, Manoj Gupta. The president also inspected the modern laboratory of the IOC fuel terminal. The president also visited the newly started local grease manufacturing facility. We'll be back with international news after this break.
பிள்ளைகள் படிக்க செல்லும் முதல் நாளிலே முதல் பாடமாக சேமிப்பதை சொல்லிக் கொடுங்கள். சிசோதான கணக்கினை மக்கள் வங்கியுடன் ஆரம்பியுங்கள். அதிக வட்டி, அதிக பரிசுகள், அதிக சலுகைகள்.
Come back with international news, and a Bolivian man has described how he managed to survive for 31 days in the Amazon jungle after he got lost.
Jonathan Acosta, 30, got separated from his 4 friends while out hunting in northern Bolivia. He says he drank rainwater collected in his shoes and ate worms and insects while hiding from jaguars and peccaries, a type of pig-like mammal. Acosta was finally found by a search party made up of locals and friends a month after he had gone missing. His family said that they would still have to piece together all the details of how Acosta got lost and how he was still psychologically managed to stay alive, but as they would be asking him gradually as he was still psychologically bruised of the experience. Jonathan Acosta lost 17 kilos in weight and has dislocated ankle.
And that's it for tonight's news. Do us tomorrow at the very same time. I'm Charita signing off with Dulanjali. Stay safe.